what really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It's Wednesday, October 11th, 2017, middle of the weekday, hump day, starting that long, slow glide down to Powhatan on Friday. And another weekend of who knows what the heck is going to be happening with any of this stuff that's going on out there. We've got a lot to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, trying to deal with all the problems the new update, the new and improved Skype is giving us. So, but he's there, ready to call on, and when you call on in to pick up the phone and put you on the air here. Now then, a lot of interesting developments, a lot of stuff going on here today. Apparently, the wife of Imran Awan has turned on him, and she is now filing her own lawsuit against her husband in Pakistan, accusing him of fraud. Now, this raises the distinct possibility that she has either sought or already has an immunity deal with the FBI in return for additional evidence and testimony related to her husband's misdeeds, and, of course, to what extent Debbie Wasserman Schultz was privy to what was really going on in the House computer networks here. Meanwhile, the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, they're looking into that stupid Trump dossier, which was written by this Christopher Steele, who was a British spy, and he authored the dossier. And he's acknowledged in a London court that he shared the document with other intelligence services, not just U.S. politicians. And so the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee is now come on back saying that all these claims that the dossier was confirmed by the other intelligence services, it wasn't independent information. It was an echo of that same dossier. I have a dossier. It must be true. Oh, I have the exact same dossier. That's confirmation for you. And basically looking into the issue of whether the FBI colluded in trying to present this false image of what Trump was supposedly doing there in Russia. So, moving on here, the Harvey Weinstein case is still with us, and I'll admit to a certain visceral pleasure after the way Hollywood treated me back in 1994. I'm sort of enjoying this. I'm having a good time. I got the popcorn out. I got the sparkling water, and I'm kicking back and I'm watching this. But apparently the latest development is Harvey Weinstein's wife has announced she is leaving / divorcing the movie mogul. He has now said he's flying to Europe for sex addiction rehab, which is silly. And, in fact, Weinstein's sex clinic may, in fact, be somewhere free of extradition to the United States. And like Roman Polanski, Harvey may spend the rest of his life in exile. And as for his wife, Georgina, by divorcing Harvey, she will isolate her half of his wealth from potential lawsuits. And when people get into serious, serious trouble, that's a very common tactic. Oh, my goodness, I had no idea that they were doing this. And they will divorce, which basically protects half their joint wealth from attachment in a lawsuit. So that may be going. Now, Harvey Weinstein is hiring top Hollywood lawyer Patricia Glazer to be his defense against all these lawsuits that are now pending, because his first lawyer, Lisa Bloom, who champions women's rights, she's a women's advocate, she felt she had to quit. She couldn't defend him on these charges. And so now Patricia Glazer is coming on in, and they're adopting the Clinton approach. They're going to basically go after the credibility of all of these women who are accusing Harvey Weinstein about what he was doing, and they're going to try and discredit them, smear them in the media, and say, you know, you'll never work in this town again. So, now, here's an interesting article. This came out of Breitbart, and they're talking about how both the Disney Corporation and the Weinstein Company are concerned about facing harassment lawsuits under the issue of corporate liability. Now, of course, Disney and the Weinstein Company are denying any knowledge. They had no idea what this guy was doing, blah, 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 blah. But, again, the question is, should they have known what was going on? I mean, it's not like it was a secret. Everybody in the town knew what was going on. I mean, back in 2013, on a pre-Oscar show, Seth MacFarlane came on out after announcing the nominees for Best Supporting Actress. He said, "Congratulations, you 5 ladies no longer have to pretend to be attracted to Harvey Weinstein." So everybody knew what was going on. So the idea that Disney management and Weinstein's company management didn't know what was going on is ridiculous. And the reason this is a case to watch goes back to the question of, can the Mandalay Bay Hotel be held liable for negligence with regard to the shootings into that concert? Now, we had that one person call on in who claimed that, well, because the Mandalay Bay could not be held responsible for the life and safety of people not on their property. And I said, I wasn't really sure. I mean, you've got deaths by negligence. If somebody does a botched repair on an airliner and it crashes in another country, the airline is still liable. So it'll be interesting to see how this evolves. But I don't think it's clear-cut that the Mandalay Bay is off the hook here, especially because of some new developments. We're going to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Finally, after hemming and hawing, Hillary Clinton finally came on out and condemned Harvey Weinstein, saying she's shocked and appalled. Again, everybody knew what was going on. And she's going to keep all the money that he donated and that all of his celebrity friends donated to Hillary. He was a major supporter of Hillary. So, as I mentioned yesterday, Gwyneth Paltrow and Angelina Jolie have also spoken up that they had to deal with this kind of nonsense. And these are not young, up-and-coming actresses who are seeking free publicity. These are already established stars. Okay? All right, we're going to take a couple of phone calls here. Dustin in New Jersey, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, that'd be a pretty good business to start in Hollywood. Have video cameras on the actresses when they go in for interviews and stuff. So it'd be a security company so they can document their meetings with these people. You know what I mean? Because it gives them insurance. You know, where is the heroes? You know, where's the heroes from, our actors and actresses? You know, we see their movies, they're so heroic and stuff. All cowards, Mike. 99% of them are cowards. They couldn't even stand up to this fat, Shrek-looking creepo. They basically enabled him.
Okay.
They were his enablers.
I want to give you an insight from having worked inside the industry for a lot of years here, okay? I don't want to tarnish the entire industry. Yes, there are some real snakes and sharks. Weinstein was one, Bagelman was another. But then I have to look back on some of the people that I knew in the industry, like Renee Valente, who was a straight shooter, did things right, did them honorably. In fact, I admired her greatly. She was sort of my film mom, and she maintained her friendship with me even after I was blacklisted. And we sort of did a long-distance hand-holding when her husband passed away, and we stayed in communication up until she passed away. So some of the people I've met are really nice people, and they're every bit as nice in person as they are on TV or film. And then there are some that are just absolutely amazingly opposite their screen image, and it can be a real shock and a disappointment to see that. I just want to get that on out there because it's not the entirety of Hollywood. It is just these big stars and big producers who feel that their positions do give them immunity for what they do. And unfortunately, the reality has been that, yes, very often it does. And I think maybe it would be nice if Hollywood as an institution would take this scandal as an opportunity for a good house cleaning.
I'm just saying, Mike, they're not heroes. Our sports people are not here. They throw a ball around the football field for money, and these people make believe there's somebody else for money. They're not real heroes. Real hero is trying to stop a war and blockading, and stuff like that. These people are fake heroes, you know, and it shows they are. Not all of them, but most of them, they circle the wagons, you know, they're afraid. If somebody's doing this, I don't care how much I get paid, I'll speak out. And if they blackball you, oh well. But to stay silent, like the Glenn Close or what's the other one? Glenn Close and Meryl Streep.
Yes.
You know, I mean, everybody knew what's going on.
Yes.
You know, everybody knows what's going on, Mike. You know, hey, Mike, real quick, I want to switch gears because this is such a diversion. I wanted to know if you see the CNBC interview with this gentleman on, I think it was today, that was talking about how the Chinese yuan is going to be basically kill off the petrodollar. And he said it'll probably be between 600 and 800. I probably think it's going to be $1 trillion lost in the U.S. to go to China with the yuan being a replacement for the petrodollar. I couldn't believe it was on CNBC. He was talking about this. You know, they usually don't want to.
Well,
they
really can't pretend it's not an issue anymore because it's certainly all over the financial media. It's certainly all over the independent media. The de-dollarization of the world is a very real phenomenon, and the corporate media has to pay attention to it, or it becomes very obvious that they're trying to keep this under wraps.
Yeah, so if you get a chance, it's a real short video. It's on CNBC's website on the right-hand side. If anybody wants to check that out. Thanks, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Al in Canada. Aloha, Al. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I'm kind of echoing exactly what Dustin said. You know, these people aren't heroes, but people have to understand something. This has been going on since Hollywood began. Mickey Rooney talked about it.
Yes.
Talked about the way these people are treated. Judy Garland, the drugs.
Yes.
Corey Feldman.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
You saw this stuff. I mean, I'm not saying that you actually witnessed, you know, all of this nonsense going on, but, you know, Dustin's right. These people are not heroes. They live in a world of make-believe. Heroes are the kind of people, you know, like what you're doing.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't want to sound too outrageous, you know, but honestly, you know, compared to an actor or a football player, it's hands down. You're the hero, not these people. These people are just idiots that have sold their souls to the highest bidder, and this is the kind of slimeball crapola that goes on, and they've put up with it, and they've said and done nothing about it. They lie in the bed they make. People like Gwyneth Paltrow speaking up now that, you know, that this stuff has come to light. Mike, is this guy the fall guy for the entire Hollywood, you know, industry? Is this what this is going to be all about, and then it's going to be business as usual, or is this going to continue, you know?
Well,
Harvey Weinstein was a pretty big guy.
He was a pretty big guy, but you know, he was also known to be a bit of a jerk here. And I'm not. I saw some of this going on. I heard a lot more about what was going on. And but again, these people do have the power to end your career. And it's very frustrating to see all these big producers up there trying to defend Harvey Weinstein's behavior and say he's really a wonderful guy, even though he groped this woman and raped this woman and everything. And I got kicked out of Hollywood for trying to report a murder. So, like I said, I'm deriving a certain visceral pleasure from what's going on. And it could trigger, a huge pushback, because Hollywood goes through phases where this stuff just becomes accepted. Then there's a big scandal and everybody locks down and says, okay, we got to clean up our public image because this is going to hit the box office. And it will. Right now, every movie that the Weinstein Company made, right now, the value just fell right off of it. Nobody's going to be buying these DVDs or Blu-rays. Good.
I'm glad that they won't. Maybe that's how you send a message to this sort of thing, right? I mean, we live in the capitalist countries, you know. Let's show them with our pocketbooks what we really feel about this nonsense that some of these people have to put up. I mean, you know, my heart goes out to these poor young girls. I listened to that one interview of that, you know, what went on. Anyway, I don't know whether it was true or not, but if it was, you know, that is heart-wrenching, you know. If you have children, you don't want them putting up with this sort of nonsense. It's ugly, and, you know, we live in a society where, unfortunately, the rich and powerful think they can prey off of us because they've been doing it for so long.
Yes.
I'm glad that guy's going down. And I hope there are many more, especially the other people that are defending that scum.
Yes.
I hope they're going down, too. I would love to see it. Mike, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much for the phone call. Now, I do want to add there's another factor going on here. Everyone's always talking about, the casting couch, it's really bad. And it is, let's be honest. And it's both genders. I mean, it's not just young women who get approached for sex. It's also the young boys as well. The problem is there are a lot of these young talents who are out there offering it because they think that is their path to success. And, sometimes it gets really difficult to maybe differentiate between the ones who are there trying to offer it and the others who are really saying, no, I'm not interested. But, to paraphrase from the feminists, no does mean no. But Weinstein, obviously, I mean, some of the stuff that he did, I can't even post it all on whatreallyhappened.com because it really is disgusting behavior. I mean, it's really just out there. All right, so getting on back to the story here. Apparently, Harvey Weinstein threatened the careers of stars, including Sienna Miller, if they didn't wear his wife's Marchesa label. She's got her own lining of clothing, and there was a huge promotion in that all these Hollywood actresses were wearing her designs, and it brought a lot of business to her. But, of course, now everybody's distancing, they're not wearing her clothes, and now her company may be in trouble. So it all comes down to a story that's out here in Russia today, Hollywood hypocrisy, saying that, the Hollywood elites present themselves as champions of virtue and liberal values, and basically Harvey Weinstein or David Begelman or Ben Affleck in that video of him groping that reporter, it's a very different picture where it's do as we say, not as we do, and we're going to do whatever we feel like. And it's saying, will Hollywood face up to its hypocrisy? And based on my experience in the industry, no, they will not. It's all about illusion. It's all about public relations. It's all about protecting the audience. And sometimes a boycott can send a message. Unfortunately, sometimes boycotts can send the wrong message. I remember when Tom Selleck was outed by this group as being gay because they felt gays needed a heroic figure of their own. And I understand where they're going. But it did seriously dent Tom Selleck's career, and I didn't feel that was fair for them to do. I went on out and I bought 10 DVDs of Quigley Down Under because I love that movie. And so you have to be careful when you call for these things. But in this case, but understand that if you boycott Harvey Weinstein's movies, you're also harming all the other people who acted in them, who are on a back-end percentage deal. Their incomes are going to be cut. The investors in the studio and the investors in the film are going to be harmed. And so this thing can actually spread out and cause more damage to people who had nothing to do with what Harvey was doing. So we have to be very, very careful about that. But as the caller said this has been going on since Hollywood began. And that Elizabeth Taylor eventually got because she refused to have sex with the studio head. Judy Garland was groped, and again, she had a huge drug problem that was kept under wraps. Shirley Temple, Marilyn Monroe, I heard 1 degree of separation away from Marilyn Monroe. She was having in her early career to trade sexual favors for her early roles. And when we come back from this commercial break, we're going to talk about this long history, and we've also got a caller waiting on the line here. But it is really ugly. Every time it goes public, everyone acts like it's a shock, but it really is going on all the time. We'll be back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're going to go ahead and take a couple of phone calls. Francis in North Carolina, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello. Hello, aloha to you both.
Aloha.
I have 2 issues I need clarification from you about.
Yes.
That I'm wondering about. First off, there are, unless I'm incorrect about this, there are 62 floors to the Mandalay Bay Inn in Las Vegas. My question is this: if there's 62 floors to that place, then how is it that the 34th floor, 35th floor, or whatever have you, if it had to be in the 30s, why did it have to be the 32nd?
Okay, the Mandalay Bay has 43 floors.
Oh, not 62?
Yes.
Oh, well, then fine. Why not 40th floor then?
My understanding is the top 4 floors of the Mandalay Bay are sort of a subset of the hotel. We talked about this the other day, where a lot of hotels that are not fully occupied are sort of signing long-term leases for those upper floors, and they're doing it down here in Waikiki, and apparently there's a bunch of Saudis who have sort of signed a lease for those top 4 floors, and they've got their own entranceway, and they're, it's kind of locked off. The regular guests to the hotel just can't get up there.
Gotcha. Well, in that case, I feel bad I missed that part then, for that matter. Now, as for another issue I'm trying to figure out, the aircraft that hit the Pentagon.
Yes.
That was a passenger plane or a non-passenger plane?
Passenger jet.
Okay, and roughly how many passengers was supposed to have been on it?
It was a very light load. I don't off the top of my head remember the exact count, but all 4 of the planes used on 9/11 were far from a full load, and that right there is kind of cause for suspicion.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that, because if there were actually people on that plane, then they must have really gotten vacated out there real quick then off the grounds.
Well, most of them, remember, the bulk of the plane actually flew inside the Pentagon on the ground floor, and then the upper floors collapsed down on it. And so that's where most of the remains and debris were found, and again, it's not usually something they want to show on the media.
Interesting, and yet they would rather show body parts and various war scenery in other countries and all that. So imagine the ops with that deal. Okay, I was just wondering about that. I appreciate your help with that. I was wondering.
All right, well,
have a great one.
Thank you very much. We're going to switch over to Nancy in California. Aloha, Nancy. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
You know, Mike, they did show John F. Kennedy getting his head blown off. I mean, basically.
Not until Jim Garrison. Not until Jim Garrison's trial of Clay Shaw. The Zapruder film was basically, for all intents and purposes, classified, and the public wasn't allowed to see it until Garrison's trial subpoenaed it and put it in the public record.
Yeah, they didn't want us to see it because it is so clear that it's not one shooter with his head being thrown back like it was.
Yes.
If you're hit in the head from the back, your head's going to be thrust forward, not backwards. But anyway, I was calling to say that I had heard that Tom Selleck was accused of being gay and that he sued in court and won.
Well, good for him. I mean, good for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they like to claim everybody's homosexual. Leonardo da Vinci, and, they try to popularize it, make it seem like it's a common thing, and all these famous, wonderful people, and it's ridiculous.
Well, it is fairly common, and the higher the population density goes, the more common it becomes. But you're right. You're right. They're trying to basically wear the skin of the leopard of these famous people to make it look like being gay is cool and hip and all the rest of it. And it's not a fair thing to do. And again, if Tom Selleck successfully sued, good for him.
He did sue over that. I remember hearing about it when I lived down there. So anyway, love your show.
Thank you. Got to let you go. Back after these commercials. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. So we're still talking about Harvey Weinstein, the Weinstein Company. And again, this sort of stuff has been going on a long time. There's a lot of sexual politics in Hollywood. Sometimes it's consensual, and sometimes it's not, and sometimes it gets rough. And if you look at books like Hollywood Babylon, you find out about back in 1921 There was a comedian, Fatty Arbuckle, big, huge film star, was accused of raping and killing an actress, Virginia Rappe. Shirley Temple claimed that an MGM producer basically exposed himself to her when she was 12. Former MGM studio head Louis B. Mayer, Roman Polanski, Bill Cosby, and Casey Affleck have all been accused of sexual harassment. Marilyn Monroe, Judy Garland, and Charlize Theron were all allegedly sexually harassed by studio chiefs and filmmakers. Now, many years ago, when I was still in Hollywood, I actually had a small bit part in a movie about Marilyn Monroe, and the show's technical advisor was somebody who'd been very good friends with Marilyn Monroe, and I'm not going to name names here, and basically shared some of the stuff that Marilyn had to go through to get her start in film. So, yeah, it goes back a long, long time. Apparently, a lot of people are now looking at this. It's opening the floodgates. Ben Affleck now has 2 embarrassing tapes that have surfaced on him. And as it turns out, a lot of people are just kind of weirded out that Disney has a director of its latest film, Powder. Turns out he's a convicted child molester. So, again, morality is very, very fluid in Hollywood. It's amazing. All right, let's take some phone calls. Angelique in Vermont, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Okay, what's on my mind is vaccines.
Okay.
That poor woman that got jailed for not vaccinating her kids, she wasn't even against vaccinations. She just didn't approve of the schedule. But you know, I've done serious homework. By the way, once upon a time before I got old, I was eligible for Mensa. So, you know, even though I'm operating on 2 brain cells, you know, I can still communicate a little bit. Okay, the vaccines. This Michigan woman got locked up because she wouldn't vaccinate her kid. And she wasn't even against vaccinations. She only disapproved of the vaccination schedule. And she goes, no, okay, I've let my kid get vaccinated for a while, but no, you're not going to OD him with all these poisonous toxins. Absolutely, and with every vaccine, because of all the adjuvants and fun things like that are in there, it causes neurological damage. But because the brain doesn't have pain receptors, the brain just goes, okay, I'm just frying away.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Well, it's not just in the brain. I mean, it's in the muscles, it's in the nerves, and there's all kinds of problems, like peanut anaphylaxis and so forth. Again, I view this tendency of the government to decide for us what foods we're going to eat, what foods we're not allowed to eat, what drugs we must take, what drugs we're not allowed to take, is basically like ranchers, the way they handle their livestock. And I don't think government really should have that right, especially when, again, they can't guarantee these vaccines are safe. They're going to say they're safe, but they can't prove it. And we find out organizations like the CDC are literally covering up the fact that there is harm from these products. And it almost...
Yeah, and even the doctors don't read the inserts and the vaccines they shoot people up with. You know, and I go, hey, give me the insert, and you know, and it goes. One of the side effects might be death.
Yeah, I love that one there. Well, you know, if you can't get the insert, you can go to the FDA's website, and the package inserts for every approved pharmaceutical are there for you to peruse. But again, my understanding is most doctors and nurses will not allow their children to be vaccinated. They'll get them a medical exemption or whatever else it takes. Most states have now eliminated the religious exemption, which is a real problem for the Amish, because they avoid vaccines and they have not had a problem.
Well, the Amish are smart enough not to even go to a regular doctor, you know?
Well, and they haven't been dealing with autism. Now all of a sudden they're being told they have to have vaccines, and that means the kids are going to start having autism and peanut anaphylaxis and all the rest of it. So it really is a mess, and I think government has exceeded its authority. by telling us.
In theory, with the Second Amendment, you know, have a right to bear arms in case the government gets out of control. And now they're they're trying to take away people's guns.
Yep.
Okay. How does that work?
Well, so far, not very well. Angelique, we're going to let you go. I got another call I need to get to here, so we're going to switch over to Gil in Arizona. Aloha, Gil. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. Just like your opinion on something, I've got a bank account with a credit union, and I just got a notice of important changes regarding your credit union blah 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 account. I won't give their name unless you'd like to know who it is.
No, let's not do that.
Okay. Keep in mind, I'm just going to read one short sentence that's in. First of all, I put money in there, and the change is withdrawal limitations. I didn't know I had any limitations on withdrawals, but here's what it reads, and keep in mind the key word may. Okay, here it is. Withdrawal limitations. This clause may require you to provide the credit union written notice if you're intent on making a withdrawal from your account by at least 7 days and up to 60 days before you would like to make a withdrawal. I didn't know I didn't have any control at all about my money.
Well, that's a very scary development to see happen, and we are seeing more and more banks have limits on how much cash you can take out at one time, and of course, above a certain level, they file a report with the government to make sure you're not being a drug dealer. But this idea that you have to notify them 60 days in advance of a large withdrawal basically tells me that your credit union may have a liquidity problem.
Do you think they might be expecting a bank run? That's another scenario I was thinking of, because they want a written, and this credit union is pretty far from where I am. So I've got to send them a letter to make a withdrawal. I mean, and it doesn't specify an amount. You know, if it said an amount over, let's say 10,000, but I could go in there and want $1, and they may require a written. You know what I'm saying? It's ridiculous.
Well, technically, your withdrawal slip or a check is the written notification of an intent to withdraw funds. I don't think they would do it for small amounts like a few hundred, but again, for several $1,000s, they might make you wait. And what that tells me is, they may be doing this in advance of bank runs. Everybody seems to be saying there's a crisis coming, and everybody's getting ready for it. And frankly, I think people ought to be getting their cash out of the banks right now. Only leave as much as you need to cover your outstanding obligations, and you keep the rest at home under your own control. Because if it's in the banks already have the authority to just slam the doors and say, we don't have to give you anything. And if you want to know how bad it can get, look at what's going on over in western Puerto Rico, where they still don't have working ATMs. People still can't get drinking water. They can't get food. And that's exactly how it's going to be like in the event of an economic upset in this country. So I think people just ought to have their wealth under their own control, because the banks literally cannot be trusted, because the laws are written for the banks to take care of themselves first and you, the customers, last.
I might suggest to your listeners to check with their bank to see if they have a clause in the contracts with them that says that is titled withdrawal limitations. They might want to look at that. Anyway, I appreciate your comment on that, and I am going to close the account.
Well, sounds like a good thing to do right about now. Thank you for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Rob in Illinois. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Good afternoon. As previous callers have said about Hollywood, the town is built on slammery. There's all sorts of dirty tricks. You know how they've taken over studios by blackballing people and all this other stuff. It doesn't just bound to the the sexual assaulting and just the deviancy of that.
No, it's ownership of businesses. Producers who get killed. I remember when Carl Gottschalk, who's the guy who founded Panavision, was found murdered in his office. And they never figured that one out. Or if they did, they didn't admit it.
Well, then you got Jim Carrey. He spoke out about autism, and they got him. Then you had Mel Gibson in his episode where he spoke against the wrong people, the wrong DNA, the wrong tribe, and they went after him. I mean, just down the line. What happened to Val Kilmer? What did he do? Anything? Just being a dork or what?
Well, I don't know where he went. I mean, sometimes people will make a bunch of money in Hollywood and they'll say, I want out of this nonsense. And he may have just gone on to do something else. I would check with the Internet Movie Database about that. In his earlier films, he was a bit of a dork. I mean, it fit the role perfectly for Real Genius.
I was being polite. They often called him. They said he was kind of an A blank blank. That's what they used to say about him in Hollywood. But he was a rising star. His last good movie was The Saint. I actually thought they were going to make it into a series like The Bull.
I actually didn't like the Saint. I did like Thunderheart. I thought that was the best movie he ever did.
Well, good is it was big budget and it was hyped up. You know what I mean? That's what I mean.
Yeah, but if it didn't do big box office, there's not going to be a sequel.
Okay. Dropping off here to this Las Vegas thing, I'm back and forth on whether or not this is a Sandy Hoax, a Charlottesville. People keep coming out and saying, we were there, we saw this, we have video, but we can't get the video out. Or we know a security officer there, working for these hotels, and the security officers double as, police officers and so on and so forth. So it's whatever's going on, it's very hard to weed through this. They got their game up really good on this one.
Well,
I'm sure you've seen it.
Yeah, they're very concerned that people just aren't buying the official story. We've been made fools of way too many times, and so people are skeptical, and they're out there trying to reinforce the story. They're changing it around to try and deal with newly emerging information, and they're just digging the hole a little bit deeper here. And it's now reached...
Here's my theory.
Okay, go ahead.
My theory, Mike. They're listening to everything we're talking about, because a lot of people are talking about this on the air and on Twitter and Facebook and so on. So they're watching what people are saying, so they're altering their story to fit, to make new narratives. They're actually manufacturing. I believe they have script writers back there actually creating scripts. Like, someone talks about the ballistics, then they turn around and they start coming out with a script about ballistics or these incendiary rounds they find in the hotel room and how they was trying to hit the fuel tank and all this other stuff. I believe they literally have script writers. They're listening to what we're saying here in the public through all these mediums, and they're actually taking this information and trying to fill the holes. And they're actually manufacturing their script like a soap opera, developing a crime story for our appetite, for our consumption, to fit the things until maybe we're satisfied, maybe we're not, but until they can no longer do it. I think that is truly what is happening here.
I have no doubt of that whatsoever, and it's very annoying that somebody's being paid more money to listen to my show than I'm being paid to do the show. So talk about an irony out there. But they're clearly they're trying to get ahead of the deterioration of the story, and we keep putting out new information that we find, and they immediately come on out and say, oh, no, couldn't be this, could be that. But we're going to let you go here because I'm going to get into this right now. Thank you for this phone call. But it's reached the point now where even the Las Vegas casinos themselves are saying there is something going on here. And the owners of the Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino are questioning the Las Vegas police's version of events after law enforcement accounts of how a deadly mass shooting played out changed dramatically on Monday. Now, that change was the time when the security guard got shot. And originally it was said that he was shot through the door by Stephen Paddock during the melee, and then they had to change the story to say that he was actually shot 6 minutes before the shooting into the crowd across the street began. And that has obviously caused a lot of problems. They had 6 minutes to know there was a shooter up on the floor, and nobody did anything. Nobody called anybody. The MGM Resorts is now disputing the Las Vegas police timeline of shooting. Now, they had Judge Andrew Napolitano was on the Cavuto show, Coast to Coast, and said, basically, the new timeline is the security guard was shot earlier than previously stated, but apparently the news was that the agent of the hotel, who should have been carrying with him a recording device, a device which would have allowed the head of security or somebody in security to listen in, was shot at by 200 times with an automatic weapon. So, according to Judge Andrew Napolitano, Mandalay Bay knew of the existence and presence and workability of the automatic weapon 6 minutes before people at that concert started being killed. It should have triggered an enormous response. And he's basically saying right there, if this ever gets in front of a jury, that's the negligence case right there. Now, somebody sent me a PDF file detailing all of the multiple private security firms hired by the Mandalay Bay. It's not just one security department. They've got several different companies there overlapping each other. Now, something very bizarre has just happened. As you know, the FBI has already gone through Paddock's home, and they didn't find anything. There were all kinds of lurid tales. He had all these guns and all this stuff, and it all turned out to be noise in the newspapers. They didn't find anything leading to a motive or a reason. They didn't find any compromising connections. So now, all of a sudden, the home has been broken into. And so now the FBI has decided, well, they're going to go back and take a second look. And no doubt they will now discover something to prove the official story. Remember Lee Harvey Oswald's fingerprints on the barrel of the Mannlicher Carcano? If you don't, I'm going to tell you that story as soon as we come back from these commercials. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. So going on back to Lee Harvey Oswald, following the assassination of John F. Kennedy and the claim that the assassination was carried out with an imported Mannlicher Carcano rifle, imported from Italy, the world's worst shoulder weapon. The scope wasn't even lined up correctly, but that was officially the gun that supposedly shot John F. Kennedy and Governor Connolly, and it went to the FBI lab. They couldn't find any fingerprints on it. Okay? Then 2 days later, FBI show up at the morgue where Oswald's body is, and they ask for a few moments' time in there. And the next day after that, the FBI just decides to check the gun one more time, and lo and behold, there's an entire intact palm print on the barrel of Lee Harvey Oswald. So I'm thinking that this break-in into Paddock's house was there to decorate the place, and that's why the FBI feels that maybe they need to go back and have another look. So it doesn't get any more transparent than this. Now, here's where the story is getting really interesting. Apparently, NBC is reporting that a maintenance worker said that he told hotel dispatchers to call police and report a gunman had opened fire with a rifle inside the Mandalay Bay before Paddock began firing on the Harvest Country Music Festival below. Worker Stephen Shook told NBC News he was checking out a report of a jammed fire door on the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay when he heard Paddock or somebody shoot the security guard. So we have that's the reason they had to change the timeline. Now remember, the Australian gentleman who was in the room next door said the police shot the security guard. There's a lot of noise out there trying to keep everybody confused. But we have this maintenance worker who heard and saw the security guard, Jesus Campos, get shot in the leg. Interesting how he has not been interviewed over what he has to say about all of this. And apparently after the shooting, Campos peeked out from an alcove and told Shook to take cover. Shook instead ran to notify management. So again, there was obvious signs of something was going on and no response. Very, very, very suspicious. All right, let's take another phone call. Charlie in Los Angeles, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Mike, we all are in agreement that people did die that day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But one thing's missing, and that's the deafening sound and the deafening sound of the Vegas helicopter fleet, the police. and they're blinding spotlights. Now, I've been all over the internet. I cannot find that sound, and I used to live there. And you cannot mistake the sound of the Vegas police force in the air, and the spotlights are everywhere. If there's any video of that place if there's any shooting, there's going to be spotlights flying around there, like NBC, whatever.
All right, Charlie, stay on the line. Don't hang up. We got to do station identification. I want to come back to this after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking with Charlie in Los Angeles, and regarding the absence of police helicopters over the Mandalay Bay and the concert venue. First of all, the Mandalay Bay and the concert venue are technically not within the city limits of Las Vegas. It's technically Clark County, and I don't know what their aviation assets are for law enforcement. But with the report of automatic fire coming from the hotel, I think probably prudence would say you're going to keep your air assets at a distance, but you're right. There should have been something once the shooting was actually over. There should have been lights there to help the first responders deal with people on the ground.
The spotlight would have been able to blind the guy in the building shooting. Let me tell you, I lived in that town for many years, and that chopper could be seen across the city with their spotlights, and that's missing in all the video, and something is very funny about this whole story.
Well, I remember when Claire and I still lived in Southern California, and they were just really building up the helicopter fleet, and they were always over and peeking through the window, and it was very annoying. And we don't have much of that here in Hawaii, which we like. But again, we don't have a 360-degree view. Virtually all of the videos are taken from the concert venue looking more or less at the Mandalay Bay, and again, that's looking away from Las Vegas proper. So I'm not. Okay. We don't really know what was there.
What about news helicopters taking aerial shots of the crime scene with the dead bodies on the ground, like News 13 and 8 News Now? Where's their helicopter footage? There's so many helicopters in Vegas. There's a dealer on the strip that's got a helicopter. So I'm very, it's very puzzling.
Well,
there's no aerial view. We got aerial view fires in California, but we got nothing at the greatest crime in the history of this country.
Well, again, I think the media coverage was at ground level, first of all, because it is night. Usually the aerial coverage is for something like a big fire or a train wreck or something. As a news producer, I wouldn't put up a helicopter for something like that. The other thing is there may have been declared a no-fly zone following it. And again, there's the issue. If you're hearing reports of automated weapons firing, you're not going to risk an air asset like that.
No, believe me, you don't shoot a machine gun for an hour in Las Vegas. This story is on stilts and it's going to fall over.
Well,
thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome. It wasn't for an hour anyway. It was much shorter than that. And again, that raises the issue of transit time. How long would it take for these helicopters to get there? But again, if you're getting police reports of automatic weapons firing and multiple guns, remember the police radio was saying multiple shooters, multiple weapons, multiple locations. You're not going to risk an air asset in there, whether it's the police helicopter or especially a news helicopter. That's an expensive piece of hardware, and you don't want to see it get shot down. All right, we're going to change over to Kathleen in Paris. Aloha, Kathleen. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Whether it's the police helicopter or especially a news helicopter.
Kathleen, please turn down your speaker.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the timing is really off. So, I saw a video that really got me scratching my head, and it showed, the really gruesome picture of the dead guy in the room.
Yes.
With his head, yeah. And beside it was a picture of Paddock. And they're not the same people.
A lot of people have pointed out it doesn't look like it's the same guy, and there's another issue there with the dead body in the room is whoever dropped the brass to complete the set, they dropped it on top of the blood that had come out of whoever that is on the ground, the supposed shooter, and
right.
there should be blood on top of those cartridges, at least the one on the left, because you need to remember the heart continues to beat even when the brain is destroyed for as long as it's got oxygenated blood. So we're not talking about blood just spilling gently out of the top of the skull. We're talking about it gushing on out and covering everything in the path. And yet there's absolutely no indications of blood spatter on any of the brass that's sitting in the blood.
Right, and so that was pretty clear. I mean, that was a big one, I think, like yesterday for me. But today was Paddock has a tattoo on his throat.
I've seen that. I've seen that picture. I'm not sure if it's a tattoo or just a trick of the lighting, because I've hunted down every picture of Paddock I could find. That's the only one where this 13 seems to be there. And you know, why would you tattoo a number on your throat? It doesn't really strike me as a...
I don't know. I kind of thought it had something to do with his gambling and then lucky, thinking that 13 was lucky for him or something.
Well, 13 is considered unlucky. You know, triskaidekaphobia. And
yes, I know.
Okay, all right.
Of course, but you know, he could be some. You know, he could think this.
I would like to find. Hang on, before we go forward, I would like to find at least one other photo of Paddock that shows that number 13. Because to me, it's so blurry and so faint, it really doesn't look like a tattoo to me. And so I'd like to see another picture to confirm that one. So we're going to do a shout-out now to our...
one more thing.
All right, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead. One more thing.
You did your shout-out.
I'll do the shout-out after you.
The other thing was... Well, we did it. So the other thing is his earlobes. You know, some people's earlobes are attached to their head, and others have like this a separate lobe thing.
Yes.
His earlobes are different.
Well, that is something I'll go back and take. I'll go back and take a look at that, because you're absolutely right. Ears are as unique as fingerprints, and they do not change through life unless you have a physical accident of some kind.
Yeah, so I saw the video, and it's clear as day. He's got different earlobes than the dead guy on the floor.
All right.
And for me, it looks like a tattoo or whatever it is. But yeah, you're right. We should see it on another photo, and there's not many of them, is there?
No, in fact, a lot of the stuff is getting taken down from the net as fast as they can. We're hearing about people who were there at the concert. They post their videos to YouTube, and all of a sudden YouTube takes them down.
But what a wrinkle that puts if the dead guy's not Paddock.
Yeah, that's worth looking into. That's a good point. I'm going to check that out.
Okay. Thank you, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. We're finally going to do our shout-out to our on-air affiliates rejoining our network. Getting onto the war zones here, apparently Russia is hitting the gas pedal on their operations in Syria, and they have destroyed the ISIS command center in Deir ez-Zor province in Syria, killed 34 terrorists who entered the country from the western regions of Iraq. Now, Russian aircraft have made 182 airstrikes against the position of jihadists in Syria over the past 24 hours. That's a lot of airstrikes. According to the spokesman of the Russian Defense Ministry, Igor Major Konashenkov, in the Majadina region, a total of 70 ISIS were eliminated, which were later identified as citizens of Algeria. So they're being smuggled in somehow. And the attack was carried out after the reconnaissance drones discovered a large militant stronghold on the eastern bank of the Euphrates River near the town of Majidin. Terrorists had an artillery and a tank warehouse, as well as a distribution network of underground tunnels. Very, very, very serious military construction. Now, ramping up the issue of the U.S. aiding ISIS a little bit more, the Kremlin has now issued a stern warning to Washington, D.C. over U.S. assistance to the terrorists in Syria. And basically, this individual, Kiselyov, put the whole picture on the screen, an ultimatum to Washington to back off or be prepared for a hot war in Syria. Unfortunately, that may be just what the U.S. wants, to get back in there, mix it up, and finally get Assad out there. Let's take a phone call. Bob in Colorado, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, how you doing today?
Doing fine.
Okay, listen, in reference to the girl with the number 13, I was thinking, I was a police officer for 27 years outside of Philadelphia. And that could be maybe, if it really is a tattoo, an MS-13 tattoo on his throat, because that's where they get tattooed. And the other thing is, too, about the helicopter, that other guy was right. I've had a couple of shootings at nighttime, and when they are hidden or whatever, the helicopters come out with their spotlights at night. Now, that's the police. I'm not saying TV news or something, which I've seen out there too at night, because they have to be told to be kept away. But what that guy was saying about the helicopters is he's kind of right. There should have been some helicopters there on the police side. So that's all I had to say.
Well, you know, it is an interesting issue, and it may have been jurisdictional, but there should have been some kind of lights on the side of that Mandalay Bay hotel. And it's amazing how the location of the shooter was basically kept in darkness the whole time, which is interesting. My next question would be, isn't the Mandalay Bay exterior lit up at night like the rest of those Las Vegas hotels? That would be something else I would want to be checking past pictures of. So we'll take a look at that one. Anyway, Bob, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. Going to switch to Ed in Philadelphia. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. I have two things. One is there's a filming of a guy painting on like a balcony over the concert while the shooting is happening.
Yeah.
And he's just panning with his phone, and the shots run out, and he just keeps panning like nothing's wrong. Like obviously there's something is wrong, but he doesn't hesitate or anything, or there's shots fired and doesn't do anything. And it seems like a consistent thing with all these filmings of the people trying to exit the concert. The second thing is the Inside Edition. The Inside Edition ran a section of their show of the injured, and there's this one where there's twins, and they're just everything's like they're laughing and doing cheers, but the one lady has a problem with her lung. I think she had a collapsed lung maybe, and they're just like they're smiling. And it just got shot. And one girl got shot in the leg. She's smiling, like nothing's wrong.
Well, they could be in shock, or they could be they could be those crisis actors that Craigslist was advertising for. We don't really know. By the way, while we were talking, I did an image search on Google, and yes, the Mandalay Bay Hotel, they have floodlights on the ground that point up on the side of the hotel. So that should have been lit up, and it's very obvious looking at those videos. It was left dark for that night. Correct, and I've seen that, and that guy panning the crowd. You can see the Mandalay Bay, and it's dark. Well, that panning is so smooth. I'm wondering if he had a little motorized tripod. They sell them for people who use their smartphone cameras to do panoramas, so you can get a smooth motion for the panorama. Right. It felt too smooth to be a human being. Right, exactly. And I'm prior military, and that automatic weapon, if it's at night, it lights up like a Christmas tree when you're firing it. We should have seen it up there on the 32nd floor. We should have. Right. Absolutely. Okay. Thanks, all right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to, all right, that's, the phone lines are open here. Boy, a lot of stuff going on here. Let's see. I need to move on down here. And there. We'll do that. Getting on back up to the top here. As you know, Israel has received a few of these Dolphin-class submarines from Germany as reparations for World War II, and now they have proceeded to buy some additional submarines. And interestingly enough, according to this article over in Israel National News, Israel has asked Germany to extend the length of the hulls of these Dolphin-class submarines, and the Germans are surmising that Israel wants to install vertical launch tubes in the submarines in order to be able to deploy nuclear missiles. And nobody's going to make a big deal about that the way they're making a big deal about North Korea's nuclear missiles or Iran's non-existent nuclear missiles. So the Germans are very, very concerned about this, and they're not really happy about the deal at all. There's even talk that they may decide to simply cancel the submarine sale completely and let Israel get their submarines from somebody else. And I'm sure Israel will scream, "Oh, you anti-Semites, you World War II, Hitler, Nazis, we're going to scream at you until you give us what we want." Now, we mentioned this briefly yesterday, that students and faculty at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, which is on this island, received this interesting email, what to do in the event of a nuclear attack. And obviously it's got people very upset on the island, and apparently Trump called a meeting of his generals to say, what's going on here. I think probably some university person took it upon themselves to do that. But the reality is, you can talk about whether North Korea can hit the mainland U.S. or not, but there's no question they can hit Guam, they can hit Alaska, and they can certainly hit right here in Hawaii, and everybody is very, very nervous about that. Let's see. Apparently, the U.S. once again is flying their supersonic bombers, the B-1B, near the Korean Peninsula as part of a drill. We're only drilling out here. We're not being provocative. And basically they're honing their combat skills. There's no reason for them to do that off the coast of Korea. They could do it over by Japan. They could do it a lot of different places. They're doing it off of Korea to provoke them. But I think at this point, North Korea has decided to just wait out Trump. They're not going to have any more missile tests. They're not going to have any more nuclear bombs here. All right, let's grab a quick phone call. Nathan in Northern California. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, hi, Michael. Thank you very much for taking my call. First of all, I wanted to apologize for my last call. I don't know, about 10 days ago, I was talking about Susan Rice's housekeeper that was found dead.
Yes.
And, yeah, I should have looked on the Internet, but Larry Klayman was talking about 80 Clinton, murders, and
yes.
We've got the DNC murders, and, with Obama, you have Lavoy Finicum and Swartz and Michael Hastings and whatever. I just thought it was kind of another day at the office, so I should have looked on the Internet, so pardon me for that one.
Okay.
But I saw the Steve Pachinik interview with David Knight, and that was, I believe, last week on Alex Jones, and, he was basically saying that this is, this Las Vegas thing is not true, and he was talking about 9/11, how the next day he knew who did it, and he named George Bush and Cheney and about a half a dozen other people, and he was talking about Sandy Hook and the Pulse nightclub in Florida and San Bernardino, all being, non-events. And David Knight didn't want to believe him, but, he didn't have a lot of information on, refuting what's going on, but he just said, well, think what you want. But Pachinik, was basically saying that, this was nonsense. And one thing I wanted to mention, since, you just spoke about helicopters, a couple of days ago, I called a major Las Vegas newspaper, and I just wanted to speak to a reporter.
Yes.
And I'll be darned, the lady put me through to the managing editor. I'm like, whoa.
Okay.
Lucky me. So I asked the managing editor, did you see any life flight helicopters that evening? And no, he was totally unaware of the fact that, any life flight helicopters got in there. And we were talking, there's 500 people injured, there's
Where would you have
people.
landed them? Where would you have landed the helicopters in that venue? Anyway, listen, we're at a commercial.
Well, not there.
We're
there,
at a commercial break. I'm sorry, Nathan. We're going to have to let you go and take a break. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And folks, we're allowing ourselves to get dragged off the really important news. We all know Vegas is a false flag. We agree on that. So let's trim down on the phone calls on Vegas. We're just rehashing the same stuff over and over again. Same thing with the NFL. It's way past its sell-by date. We need to be focusing on things like the rush to war, the exploding Imran Awan scandal, now that his wife appears to have turned on him, the fact that his lawyer is out there trying to claim that Debbie Wasserman Schultz's laptop, the one that she literally threatened the Capitol Police to get back, should be covered by attorney-client privilege. They definitely don't want to see anybody to see what's on there. So they got to be really scared. All right, so getting on back here to Korea. The United States has sent another nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, Nimitz class, the USS Theodore Roosevelt, known by her crew as the Big Stick. And it's en route to the Western Pacific. It left San Diego port last week. Could possibly pull in here to Pearl Harbor for a day, give the crew a little bit of R&R, which would be kind of fun there as well. But again, the Theodore Roosevelt is rather notorious because during some war games in the Atlantic, a French submarine, the Saphir, was able to get inside the Theodore Roosevelt's defenses and simulate the sinking not only of the Theodore Roosevelt itself, but a couple of the escorts. So again, we're not sure what's going on. The U.S. government is once again throwing their weight around. They're demanding that Egypt sever all ties with North Korea or face further punitive action. You don't talk to people that we don't like. You don't talk to people we tell you not to talk to. You're only friends with the people we let you be friends with. So I'm sure this is not going to sit too well. To give you an idea of just how out of control the propaganda is, this was actually in the Express in Great Britain. And basically, it comes down to the story that there was a U.S. military helicopter involved in some of these drills off the coast of Korea. And the headline says, aircraft crashes in Japan near North Korea. And the helicopter came down in the Okinawa region on Wednesday morning. And apparently crashed, huge ball of fire. And they're out there saying, North Korea could have shot down the helicopter. It might have been North Korea. This could be the provocation that leads to war. Look on a map. Look on Google Earth. We're talking about 800 miles to get from the coast of North Korea to Okinawa. Had the helicopter been hit with artillery or a missile, it never would have gotten close to Japan. Or if it was damaged and had to fly 800 miles, the pilot would be on the radio saying, we've been shot at, we've been shot at. This is just another case of poorly built American military hardware falling apart when it's needed. And some of this military hardware is creating a morale problem. Story coming out of womensystems.com. Apparently, one of the U.S. Navy's missile cruisers, charged with keeping North Korea at bay, has a serious morale problem. And the U.S. Navy crew is saying basically the ship is like a floating prison. And they're very much not happy. Now, morale is very important to keep the efficiency of a fighting force up. And it is starting to look like the U.S. Navy is not being well run. More on that in a little bit. Another U.S. destroyer, the USS Chaffee, is sailing dangerously close to the 12-mile international limit around the Paracel Islands in the South China Sea in what they call a freedom of navigation exercise, which says we get to go wherever we want and you can't tell us otherwise. Very stupid thing to be doing at the same time you're trying to convince China to help rein in North Korea. It tells you the kind of quality of thinking that's going on over in Washington, D.C. Beijing has responded, sending a guided missile frigate, 2 fighter jets, and a helicopter to warn the USS Chaffee away. We're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And I know I said I wanted to move away from Las Vegas, but during the commercial break, I did a check with the FAA's website. And as it turns out, the Mandalay Bay Hotel and the concert venue are inside the terminal control area, the TCA, for the Las Vegas International Airport. And so that would probably explain why there were no news or police helicopters overhead because of the possibility of collision with somebody that's in the holding patterns. All righty. So, all right, we're going to take a phone call. Tom in Florida, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, good day, Michael. What's on my mind is I was watching the news, and they have this guy, Rowan Farrow, whatever, and he's with Rachel Madcow disease. And they're talking about this guy Weinstein, and I'm looking at this guy Michael, and he's a powerful guy in Hollywood, and this guy is giving us schmuck movies. We're getting all these schmuck movies made by 2% of the population, like Weinstein, and I believe Soros and all these other crooks are behind Hollywood. They don't make wholesome movies anymore; they're all garbage. And you got this Weinstein, and this guy, he's a big schmuck. And there's your problem with the country. That's why the country's so liberalized and demoralized, and it's an abomination of the alien nation. We're all going to end up with the constipation because you got guys like Weinstein running Hollywood.
Well, again,
exactly what it is.
Again, I understand, what it looks like. But again, not everybody in Hollywood is a crook, and not everybody who's Jewish is a crook. And again, yes, we know about Weinstein, we know about Begelman, but again, a lot of other people aren't. So it really is, we need to focus on the individuals who are behaving this way. And I don't want to paint this with a broad brush because there's a lot of very good people who work in the film industry. I met and knew a lot of them when I worked in Hollywood. And it's not fair to them to tarnish them with what Begelman and Weinstein have done. So, we need to go after the guilty, but we also have to make sure that we are protecting the innocent who are not part of this.
Yeah, Michael, you're right, but look what they did to Mel Gibson. You remember Mel Gibson got drunk about 10 years ago when he said something to the cop or something about Jews, and they crippled his career, just like Arsenio Hall with what happened with him with Farrakhan. They're so powerful at 2% of the population, yet they're controlling 100% of Hollywood. And it's unbelievable. And the majority's got to watch what the minority's telling them. The problem is, Michael, is the asphalt's telling the gasoline what to do. That's exactly what's happening in our politics and in Hollywood and all this. The asphalt telling the gasoline what to do, and now Donald Trump's come in there and he's exposing a lot of this crap, and a lot of this stuff is being exposed. Like you mentioned before, Soros. That guy should be locked up. I don't know if you've been following what's going on with Soros with Hungary.
Yes, I have.
The president of Hungary, wants to arrest him. He wants him arrested, Soros.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Okay? Soros
should be arrested. He's guilty of numerous violations of the USA Patriot Act in this country for encouraging and subsidizing the use of violence to coerce a change in the political agenda of the country, and that is defined as an act of terror in the USA Patriot Act.
Absolutely, and listen, Michael. Look at the New York. The New York Times and all these leftist papers. They're controlled by Zionists. Let's not kid ourselves. The Bolsheviks are running our networks. They're running the majority of the newspapers are run by Bolsheviks.
Yeah, but the good news is people are turning away from those traditional corporate media. They're coming over here to the independent media, and most of our independent media are still in the hands of independent people.
Thank God for that. Thank God for that, Michael. And look at Jerry Jones yesterday at the Dallas Cowboys. Now he's telling those players to stand up. Now I want to see when all these owners say, "Okay, if you don't stand up, you're off the team." And I want to see kind of lawsuits. They're going to bring all Black Lives Matter. They're going to have all kinds of lawsuits going on. And like I said in the past, 2 weeks ago, NFL should now stand for no fans left. There's no fans left because it's disgusting.
Yeah, it has. It's harmed the image of the sport. It's harmed certainly the finances of the game. Football, American-style football, may never recover from this. And the interesting thing, of course, is that under both U.S. law and the rules of the NFL, you're supposed to stand and show respect to the flag. And I understand that these players claim to have a specific gripe about a specific aspect of life here, but that flag represents everybody in the country. And so when they're disrespecting the flag, they're disrespecting you and me. But again, this has been talked to death, and it's being used to distract us from this growing Imran Awan scandal, where they're now out there saying this definitely deserves a special prosecutor, a special counsel. And, of course, we'll see the Department of Justice try and block that for the same reason that they blocked a request for a special counsel into the email server and the Clinton Foundation because it cuts too close to the heart of the narcocracy. They're going to just keep going after Donald Trump. All right, well, listen, Tom, got to let you...
I have a great picture of Hillary with Weinstein, Michael. I don't know if you've seen a picture of Hillary getting campaign contributions from Weinstein and Hollywood leftists, all a bunch of schmucks. And Hillary's talking about the women's rights and all that. What a hypocrite. You want to talk hypocritical. And one more thing, Michael, and I'll let you go. I know you other callers. One more thing about this, about the public schools and throughout the United States. None of these kids in these public schools are taught about what happened during the Civil War and how many white males killed each other. And then the blacks, they're doing quite well because at that time there was only like 700,000 slaves in the United States. Now there's 44 million of these people. So they should be saying thank you for what happened during all this that happened in our history.
Well, they're
tearing our history down.
They certainly have better standard of living than the people who were left behind in Africa.
They were in Africa.
But the reality is that only about 1.5% of white people owned slaves at the height of slavery. And so, again, this shows the danger of painting with too broad a brush where Black Lives Matter are out there saying, you're all a bunch of slave owners. No, we weren't. Well, you're descended from slave owners. No, most of us weren't. I'm descended from people who ran a station on the Underground Railroad. Okay, if anybody owes anybody reparations, it's you owe me. And again, this is fanning up divisions within our society to keep us angry with each other, unable to unite against the real cause of all of our problems, which is that central federal government and that private central bank.
Yeah, Michael, one more thing.
You already had one. Tom, you've already done one more thing 3 times. I've really given you enough airtime. We're going to let you go. Thank you very much here. Yes, let's try and confine our phone calls to maybe 1 or 2 questions, but, to keep on saying one more thing, one more thing, one more thing. Tom, get your own radio show. Now, getting on back to the war zones here, Russia has kicked off a major missile drills up in Siberia. And this is including the new Topol-M ICBM mobile launchers. They test-fired that missile a while back. And so they've got 4,000 people, 400 pieces of military hardware, including several of these ICBM launchers taking part in the exercise. And apparently Russian supersonic fighter jets were also participating in the drills. This is expected to fuel an ongoing missile row between Russia and the United States of America. Oh, how dare you have missiles? You're supposed to just lay down your arms and let us walk on in and destroy your ruble. I don't think so. Apparently, the Navy has fired 2 officers over the USS John S. McCain collision, saying the accident was preventable. This goes back to what I was saying about the crew of that ship off the coast of Korea saying it's like a floating prison. It's like they're not really running the ships very well. So apparently Commander Alfredo Sanchez, who was the McCain's commander, and Commander Jesse Sanchez, its executive officer, were both relieved of their duties and reassigned. And Navy officials basically said they were fired due to a lack of confidence in their ability. Now, the McCain guided missile destroyer collided with the merchant vessel Alnic MC on August 21st near Singapore. 10 American sailors died, 5 others were injured. And while the investigation is ongoing, it's evident the collision was preventable. The commanding officer exercised poor judgment. The executive officer exercised poor leadership of the ship's training program. In other words, it's pretty much what I speculated at the time. They ignored the rules of right-of-way, tried to dodge around the front of the ship, miscalculated, and hit it. Now, those rules of right-of-way are there for everybody's safety. And for the commanding officer to just ignore them, to assume that because I'm a warship, I'm allowed to get away with this. He was reckless, and he did get people killed. And I don't think he should have been reassigned. I think he should have been dishonorably discharged. Now, up in Afghanistan, last month, the U.S. military dropped 751 bombs. It's a lot of bombs. And it's getting to be a problem because apparently, according to this article out of Scoop, the U.S. Congressional Committee is warning the U.S. is running out of bombs. They need more bombs. How are they going to pay for it? I don't know. We'll shut down a few schools. We don't need those schools. We need bombs more than we need schools. We need bombs more than we need good highways or clean drinking water. Well, just more bombs, more bombs, more bombs. Now, getting into the economic news, Iran and Turkey have signed a deal to trade in their own currencies. They're not going to go to outside foreign currencies like the euro and the dollar. They're just going to trade across the border. No reason for them not to. This idea that you have to use a globally accepted currency is a holdover from World War II. But in this day and age of instant global financial transaction and confirmation, it's an obsolete idea. But of course, the U.S. agenda is to force the world back to Bretton Woods, where everybody has to use the U.S. dollar for cross-border trade and banking for a small fee. Because that's about the only thing left holding our economy up. Our manufacturing has been in decline. Even our weapon systems produced by the military-industrial complex are being abandoned. People are turning to Russia and China. They're turning away from Boeing after the disaster of the Dreamliner. And nobody wants our GMO agriculture. This government, in the name of a fast buck, has basically painted the entire nation into a hideous corner. And they're planning on trying to shoot their way out of it. Now, as far as Iran is concerned, coming to these agreements to trade with other countries in their own internal currencies is a way of bypassing the expected U.S. sanctions. When Trump pulls out of the P5+1 deal, even if Iran continues to abide by the deal with the rest of the P5+1 partners, the U.S. is going to hit Iran with sanctions. You will let us look at your missiles. You will let us look at your bookkeeping. You will let us peek under the mattresses in your beds. So Iran is making moves to be able to weather that. As we mentioned yesterday, Sears Canada basically has surrendered to the inevitable. They're closing all the stores. They're laying off 12,000 people. They're going to have a liquidation sale starting on the 19th and going until basically the buildings are empty. So it'll be a good opportunity for Canadians to do their Christmas shopping on the cheap. But it is an alarming reminder of just how bad the economy is to see yet another iconic retailer flailing and thrashing and dying. And we here tell that Sears, right here in the United States of America, may not be far behind. Everybody's holding their breath and hoping there's going to be a wonderful Christmas shopping season. It's not going to happen. Nobody has any money, and nobody wants to use that plastic. So, now then, the Supreme Court has thrown out one of the cases brought against President Trump's travel ban. And apparently the High Court said that Trump versus International Refugee Assistance Project is moot, as the 90-day ban on foreign nationals entering the U.S. expired and has now been replaced by different guidance. Now, everybody's out there saying that Trump's travel ban is anti-Muslim, or it's racist, or it's this, or it's that. No, it isn't, because the travel ban is on specific countries. And if you are coming from those countries, it doesn't matter what color you are, what religion you are, you will be subject to additional security. And it makes perfect sense in this day and age of international terrorism or international terrorism false flags. Now, interestingly enough, over in Columbus, Ohio, there's an illegal immigrant, Edith Espinel, and she has been fighting deportation for like 20 years. And there was another deportation order. They made her buy a plane ticket to Mexico. She has instead taken sanctuary in a church in Columbus, Ohio, because ICE basically is very hesitant to go on in and break that. Here's the issue here, interestingly enough. She's been in the U.S. for 20 years. She still can't speak English. She has to communicate with the reporters through her son. 20 years, and she hasn't learned the language. That's just absolutely amazing. Okay, the situation in Catalonia is getting very, very tense. Madrid is threatening imprisonment and death to the Catalonia leaders. They've set a deadline of 8 days to just give up this idea of independence. Now, the Catalan president apparently is listening and has put independence on hold, calling for talks with Madrid. They have not issued the expected declaration of independence. But it looks like King Philippe is taking a very, very hard line on this, and it could still break into a civil war. Latest region to want to talk about independence referendum, Yorkshire. They want to be a separate entity from the United Kingdom. And they want their own elected mayor, like London and Manchester. They basically want to be a separate, distinct area. So we'll see what happens with that. All right, we're coming up here on another commercial break. I see we've got another phone call waiting that we will get to as soon as we come back from this next word from our sponsor. But the good news is, obviously, people are pushing back against globalism. People want nations. They want nations they can feel pride in, not just be part of some massless, faceless humanity in a gigantic human ranch. We'll be right back. Hello, hi, America. Welcome back to our show here. And President Trump is on TV making a speech about his new tax plan. And he's saying America's finally back on the right track. Then he goes on to say unemployment's at a 16-year low. We know that's only because of the way they count the unemployed. Stock market is soaring. That's true, but it's being manipulated. So we're basically in the same situation we've always been. We're being mushroomed, kept in the dark, and fed on poo by our leadership. Let's take a phone call. Terry in Oregon, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, if I was Rouhani in Iran, listening to Nikki Haley and all the threats on Iran about sanctions and getting rid of the agreement, the nuclear agreement, and in light of what's going on in Syria, I think as soon as he voids that agreement, I'd be on the phone with Putin saying, hey, we got a couple empty airfields over here and free rent for all Soviet fighters if you want to have a presence in our country.
Yeah, I would expect that that's exactly what will happen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mike, just a thought. Thanks. We'll talk to you next time. Bye.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We'll let you go. I mean, obviously, everything the U.S. is doing to all these countries, it's driving them into the Russian sphere of influence. It's all counterproductive. And again, I'm looking at the quality of strategic thinking coming out of Washington, D.C., and realizing Deep Throat was right. These really aren't very bright guys. Now, Philip Giraldi is out with a story about how Sputnik and Russia Today are now under investigation. Oh, we have to investigate them. They keep saying things that the U.S. government doesn't like. Well, that's what the First Amendment is for. And it's just another way of making Vladimir Putin the fall guy for everything that goes wrong in Washington, D.C. And there's a lot going wrong in Washington, D.C. They're making bad choices. And they're being directed by people who have their own specific agendas and absolutely no concern about how other people are going to be made to pay and suffer for those agendas, in particular Israel. Israel doesn't care if the United States is destroyed as long as Israel's other enemies get destroyed first along the way. Israel doesn't care about Americans other than the checks that we send. These generals that are surrounding Trump, they just want more war because more war means more money, faster promotion. They get more little medals for their chest. Eisenhower was absolutely right about that military-industrial complex. So right now, there's an investigation of Sputnik in Russia today. They're trying to find some way they can silence them and shut them down without it looking like it is a violation of the First Amendment. So the crackdown is coming. They want the First Amendment to go away. They want the Second Amendment to go away. The Fourth Amendment is already gone pretty much. And that's the state of the state. We'll be right back after station identification. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And getting on back to the news here, from the world of political correctness, apparently there's a museum in Boston that honors the popular children's author Dr. Seuss, and it's been caught up in a PC conflict regarding an illustration from Dr. Seuss' very first book, And to Think That I Saw It on Mulberry Street. This was published in 1937. And apparently a lot of people are trying to basically force the museum to remove the offending image. And now they're being criticized for yielding to political correctness. So you can't do it one way or the other. And apparently the issue was that this book, published in 1937, depicted a Chinese man with chopsticks, a pointed hat, and slanted eyes. Now, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but in 1937, Chinese field workers wore pointed hats. They do use chopsticks. And it is just seriously getting out of control. They even admit it was a perfectly appropriate illustration for 1937, but now in 2017, it has to be banned. Again, this is part of a larger campaign to erase our culture, to erase our heritage, to erase our identity, to make it easier for the globalists to control us. A lot of people are very, very upset over something that happened at the Frankfurt Book Fair. It's the world's largest publishing event. And apparently the upset is caused by a string of books for young readers that are basically selling the ideas of gender fluidity and transsexuality. Now, these are kids. We're not talking about adults who are dealing with issues of their identity. We're talking about easily impressionable kids. And, of course, the LGBT community is out there celebrating we've broken the last taboo in children's writing, huzzah, huzzah, huzzah. And apparently one of the books was introducing Tilly. This is Thomas the teddy bear, who partway through the book says, I've always known that I'm a girl Teddy, not a boy Teddy. Now, here's my concern about this. Is this convincing children that they should want to be this way, as opposed to simply making it acceptable for them to deal with the confusion? In other words, how much of this whole gender fluidity is being imposed from outside? And we keep hearing these stories about people who go through gender reassignment surgery, and they realize their problems are still just as bad, and they even try and go on back. And remember, we ran this story about this guy who wanted to do a study about people who had done the transgender surgery, then they'd gone on back. He wanted to count them up and see how many there were. Was banned. Politically incorrect. You can't do that. Political correctness is being used as a tool of dictatorship. to simply say you can't talk about this, you can't use these words, you can't say this, you can't question that, it's politically incorrect. Well, screw political correctness. I'm sorry. There are real issues out there that need to be discussed. Getting on back to Harvey Weinstein, it's not just Hollywood where this stuff is going on. Story that came on out of the Daily Mail in Great Britain. Apparently, Jason Moore, a former attaché of the Canadian High Commission, diplomat, pleaded guilty last year of 3 counts of making indecent or pseudo photographs of a child between December 2010 and April 2015. And he pled guilty to 1 count of possessing a prohibited image of a child and 1 count of possessing an extreme pornographic image. So it's not like Anthony Weiner was all that unique. Now, apparently up in Canada, their child porn laws are so strict that even faking a child porn image in Photoshop is punishable. So what is it about wealth and power and fame that it does this to people? I'd certainly like to find out someday. Getting back on over to California, those fires are still growing. Huge amount of damage, more evacuations ordered, and they're trying to drop hints that this may be a terrorist attack, or at least it's arson. I think these fires are out of control. Again, the budgets for the fire breaks, keeping those fire break roads open, were simply cut, and they were allowed to grow over, and that's why these fires are just driven before the wind. These fires shouldn't be this large if those fire breaks were where they were supposed to be. And apparently, again, there's a big stink over the fact that some of the world's largest water bombers, and we're not talking about the 747 out of California, but the Russian water bombers. Russia has said, we will send those over there to help you, and the U.S. is saying, no, you're our enemy. You'll use those water bombers to spread vodka on the fire, or some such nonsense as that. We're going to do a shout-out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. And isn't it amazing, as all this destruction is hitting California, and now the wine country is catching fire, that the government is going to put politics ahead of the people and refuse the offer of assistance from Russia. Now, we've been talking about medical costs, medical quality. It's a big, big issue. And over at John Rappaport, they have an article, The Medical Holocaust No One Wants to Expose. And apparently it's reporting on an article, a study, Is U.S. Health Care Really the Best in the World?, published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. This is as legitimate as you get. And they like to say our medical care is the best in the world. It's actually ranked about 30 seconds. Here's what this study found. Every single year in the U.S., there are 12,000 deaths from unnecessary surgeries. There are 7,000 deaths from medication errors in hospitals. There are 20,000 deaths from other errors in hospitals. There are 80,000 deaths from infections acquired in hospitals. 106,000 deaths from FDA-approved, correctly prescribed medicines. So medically caused deaths in the U.S. are 225,000 every single year. That means the U.S. medical system is the third leading cause of death in the United States, behind heart disease and cancer. That's pretty insane. You're much more likely to be killed by your doctor than by somebody with an AR-15. Now, Greenpeace, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with them. When they were first starting up, I got involved and I was a supporter. And then I discovered that much of their agenda was politically driven, and they got a little too global warmy for me. And don't forget, one of the founders of Greenpeace actually admitted that their prediction about Greenland losing all of its ice in 20 years was just propaganda to get people to support the anti-global warming agenda. So I'm not as fond of Greenpeace as I used to be. But in this case, they have raised a valid issue. And that is that many of these nuclear waste pools, and they're pointing particularly to France and Europe, but they're saying basically these waste pools are vulnerable to being used in a terror attack. The materials in them are very flammable. All you have to do is breach the pool so that the cooling solution leaks on out, and they'll catch fire. And that's a big problem. They're not really well secured at all, and Greenpeace is right to point at this. Meanwhile, of course, there is this issue of the ruthenium-106 being detected all across Europe, and now it's in Greece. And ruthenium is basically mined. It's a contaminant, if you will, of certain metals being mined, platinum-class metals. And it's separated out and sold as its own commodity. And it is sold for durability and various other industrial applications. But it is radioactive. And the ruthenium-106 is the longest-lived isotope at 360-some-odd days. Now, its other use, it's used for cancer therapy machines. Now, those are very carefully monitored and tracked following a really horrible accident that happened some years ago in South America, where somebody had a cesium cancer radiotherapy machine. There wasn't any tracking on it. They got a new machine. They threw the old one out without removing the cesium capsule. And people scavenging in the trash found the machine, broke open that capsule, thought it was really cool. The stuff glowed blue in the dark and triggered one of the worst radiological contamination accidents in the world. So those radiotherapy machines are very carefully tracked and monitored by the relevant authorities. The ruthenium-106 is used for one other purpose, and that is as a source of heat for radioisotope thermoelectric generators used on satellites. Now, most civilian satellites, because of concerns about nuclear material in orbit, most civilian satellites use solar cells. So I'm taking a guess here that somebody's secret clandestine military satellite powered by a ruthenium radioisotope thermoelectric generator has fallen to Earth and crashed somewhere in Eastern Europe. And the ruthenium is just leaking out from there. And hopefully they will find it and dispose of it at some point. There's a lot of stuff falling out of the sky. There's a lot of stuff up there. We had one come down over our island and over Maui about, I think it was just about a year ago. It's quite spectacular. Getting into the world of computers, apparently Facebook and Instagram are experiencing extreme outages. People are complaining all over the place. Outage report and down detector are basically saying it's a major problem. US, Hungary, Kosovo, Germany, Poland, and other countries. And this is the second widespread outage for both social networks. And you remember, Instagram is owned by Facebook. This is in less than 2 months. And Facebook is blaming today's outage on unspecified technical issues, meaning one of two things. They got hacked, or their software isn't really up to the task. And again, we're dealing with a real crisis in our country in that the software on our computers, and this includes the military computers, it's not secure, it's not robust. Programmers and software development company management are basically relying on the increase in speed of processors to justify sloppy code writing. Now, I remember when I was a kid and first starting to learn about computers, and we had an IBM, I can't even remember the model number, but it programmed in Fortran 4. And because of how slow the machine ran, it was a specific goal to get your code to run as fast and efficiently as possible. And that was an issue again when we started getting into computer animation, because rendering, especially ray tracing, it's very compute intensive. And you want to get all the power out of that processor that you can. But most commercial software houses, they just say, oh, well, we're going to have slow software and we'll just let the processor improvements do it. Remember when Microsoft's Flight Simulator X first came on out, and it ran very slow and very jerky on all the machines that were available at that time. And it actually came with a little paper slip inside saying, yes, you're going to experience slowness because we've designed Flight Simulator X to take advantage of future improvements in processor capability, meaning they couldn't get it to work efficiently. And they wanted to sell it anyway, so they sold it with this lame excuse about how we have had the foresight to write this code for the future processors and so forth. And which I do like Flight Simulator X. I'm not big into computer games. The only games I allow myself are space flight simulators and that sort of ilk. Anyway, all right, let's grab a phone call. We have Yvonne in New York. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. Can you hear me?
I hear you just fine.
Hi, Mike. Okay, about Facebook, I didn't know that they crashed today, but yesterday I noticed that they were shadow banning comments about Harvey Weinstein. A friend of mine, I went onto their page, and they get a lot of views. They have a lot of followers.
Yes.
And I went to comment on one of their previous posts. I went to put a link on a post that they had put up a few days earlier. And I went, oh, look at that. They have he had 2 Harvey Weinstein posts that never showed up in my feed, and I usually check it every night. And then I noticed that nobody had commented on it, nobody had liked it, and that's very unusual for him. In fact, it never happens. So they were shadow banning it. And then I went on to Twitter, because I said, let me give them a little hate on Twitter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing that showed up was a picture of Harvey Weinstein, and it said trending, and it was a post where it said, people are sick and tired of hearing the phrase, oh, I have a daughter, or something like that. And in other words, the implication was that people are tired of hearing about it.
Mm-hmm.
Which is disgusting because that's not true. Nobody's tired of hearing about it. It's and then to him, do you know Corey Feldman?
Yes. Well, I know of him. I've never met him.
But yeah, you should interview him on your show. He's a really cool guy. He wrote a book called, I know he's been on, he's talked on talk shows about the pedophilia in Hollywood, but he also wrote a book called Choreography, which is a very short book, and it's very easy to read, and it's very fun because he talks about, like, the boonies and, being behind the set, the kind of stuff that you talk about sometimes, you know, and it makes it fun to read. And, but he also, he talks about the pedophilia, but in a way where it's palatable, and he really makes the reader understand that the Hillary Clinton female types in Hollywood are as much of a problem as the men.
Oh, they are. They absolutely are. When I was working on Brain Scan, the star of that movie was Eddie Furlong, who was the kid from Terminator 2. And he was having an affair with his studio-supplied teacher. In fact, he missed a shot because they were off doing the nasty somewhere on the lot and they couldn't find him. And so I'm in the weird position of actually having a double credit on that movie. I'm the on-set visual effects supervisor, and I'm also a stunt hand, where they used my hand instead of Eddie Furlong for the final fight scene.
There was that other one, too. Oh, God, what was her name? She was really popular. Oh, God, I can't remember her name, but there's a picture of her, like, kissing a little boy when she was, like, in her 20s.
What was the Brady Bunch? Who played the mother?
Oh, her, too. Yeah, her too. Okay, there was her, and then
and she was having an affair with one of the kids. She was having an affair with one of the actors playing her kid, Florence Henderson.
Right. There was her.
Florence Henderson. Yeah.
There was her. And then there was the one that she was married to a famous actor. I can't remember her name, but it'll come to me after I hang up, I'm sure.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, a lot of these females now with Harry Weinstein, they're trying to come out like acting like they're victims. But I feel like if you're 50, 60, 70 years old, you're too old to play the victim. It's too late because it means you knew for decades that, according to Corey Feldman's book, he talks about, it's very sad, he talks about a lot of parents, mothers, in his case his own mother, that was just pimping him out. I mean,
I mean, absolutely. I mean, you look at that whole Michael Jackson situation with the little kids, and you have to realize those parents were willing to let their kids be exposed to this for the honor of being in the presence of the great Michael Jackson. And now, of course, we know that Obama had one of his daughters interning with Weinstein. And, you know, it's a sin bin is what it is. Anyway, Yvonne, we're going to let you go. We got to do a commercial break here.
Okay.
And we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're still talking about computers. And the malware problem is clearly out of control. It's costing the American worker, the American consumer, billions of dollars every single year. It is a clear and present danger about which the government chooses to do nothing whatsoever. And certainly the costs of the ransomware are out of control. The dangers from ransomware affecting hospitals are putting patients' lives at risk. And as we mentioned in that earlier report, they're already risking their lives just being in that hospital to begin with. So apparently there are malicious iOS applications that create fake login pop-ups that look exactly like the ones used by Apple. And basically, they're saying you can protect yourself from the fake pop-up scam by never inputting passwords into an Apple pop-up. Instead, you should go into your iPhone settings menu and enter it there to confirm it's a real request from Apple. But again, this isn't really a solution because they're putting the burden of dealing with the malware on us, the end user. And that's not what we paid Apple all that money to have. We want a device that makes our lives easier, more productive, more organized, not something that becomes a permanent lifestyle of patching and hacking and working around. But again, as long as computer software and hardware is indemnified against product liability, we're going to get sloppy products. And that's exactly what's going on here. Now, as you know, there's been a big, huge stink by the Department of Homeland Security to ban Kaspersky software from all U.S. government offices and strongly recommend that Americans stop doing business with them. There's been a new development. Apparently in 2015, Israel hacked Kaspersky, and they got into Kaspersky's systems. And then they basically turned around and said to the NSA, oh, there's something nefarious there. So there may be something inside Kaspersky, and it may be that Israel put it there. Now, Google has enough problems already with public relations, and they just had another one. Apparently, their Google Smart Speaker, the Home Mini, has a problem with the touch sensor on the top, and as it turns out, it's been recording everything you say in front of it and sending it to Google all the time, even when you think it's turned off. And Google is out there saying, oops, our bad, and they're going to issue a software update to resolve the issue. Personally, I would never have one of those in my home. I mean, I already have the cell phone spying on me on behalf of advertisers and marketers and the government. I don't need another device listening to me as I wander around my home banging into the walls. If you are a pornography fan, and I know a lot of you are, apparently Pornhub was hit by a hack That means anyone who used it could have contracted a virus. And apparently there is a secret malvertisement has been running on the site for more than a year. And it works by infiltrating people's computers and then having their machine taken over, all without your knowledge. Now, the problem was shut down almost as soon as it was discovered, but it has been running quietly for more than a year, and the damage could have spread across the entire Internet. So it really is out of control. And we'd all like to think there's a magic wand that we can wave over our computers that will make these problems go away. But frankly, until we start catching some of these cyber criminals and nailing them to the wall, let them hang there until they rot, it's not going to go away, because this idea that you just need to buy a new piece of software, a new piece of anti-malware, it's turned it into a game. Nobody sees that there's a moral dimension to this anymore. It's about, my hackers are better than your hackers. Let's go at it. We're having fun. Our team's going to win. Our team's going to win. And the American people are the losers. We'll be right back after these commercials. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And apparently Donald Trump's war with the corporate media just ramped up a notch, because apparently NBC ran a story that Trump is planning a dramatic increase in the nation's nuclear arsenal. And the White House has absolutely denied that. Apparently the report in NBC was a 10-fold increase in the U.S. nuclear weapons stockpile. And, of course, this was all news to President Trump's national security team. And Trump is now basically threatening NBC over this fake news. And in another article over there in the New York Daily News, Trump is saying it may be time to challenge the licenses of these on-air news broadcasters. And they have a comment about President Trump has made the First Amendment his number one enemy. That's not entirely accurate. He's made liars his enemy, and well, you should. The First Amendment is not there to protect liars. It's there to protect people who tell the truth from a government that lives on lies. So that is really heating on up. And speaking of NBC, there's a story one of our members just put on up about how apparently freelance correspondent Ronan Farrow is the guy who broke the Weinstein story over in the New Yorker. And a lot of people were scratching their heads and saying, well, this guy normally works for NBC. What's he doing over at the New Yorker? The story is coming on out that NBC basically tried to kill the story, tried to spike it, because it's an embarrassment to our good friend Harvey. We can't have this out there. It makes him look bad. He is bad. If you are bad, you should look bad. That's the way the real world is supposed to work. And it reminds me again of when Roger Morris and Sally Denton got hold of Barry Seal's documents about the Iran-Contra gun and drug running following his assassination, and they wrote up a very good article for their employer at the Washington Post. And it cleared fact-checking by the Washington Post lawyers. It was cleared for publication. And managing editor Bob Kaiser, a Skull and Bones alumni with President Bush, basically spiked the story, and they wound up having to take it over to Penthouse. So remember what Operation Mockingbird is all about. All the top executives at all of these media outlets, they're CIA assets, and yes, a lot of them are also members of The Chosen. And they're looking out for each other. They don't have a commitment to journalistic integrity and telling the truth. They're there to sell you things. They're there to sell you that Weinstein is a really nice guy. They're there to sell you that Trump is a horrible colluder with Russia. They're there to sell you the new car, which nobody has any money to buy. They're there to sell you the next war. That's what their job is. So now we have NBC has been outed for trying to suppress the Weinstein story. And apparently Ronan Farrow has gone public with this, saying, yeah, he took this to NBC, and they absolutely said, no, we're not going to do it. We're not going to touch it. Shows you the power of Hollywood. Getting on back to computers now. Apparently OnePlus is a sort of an upstart cell phone company, and it took on the big guns with the help of their very affordable handsets. They have an in-house version of Android dubbed Oxygen OS, but apparently there is a problem. The company's approach to data sharing is very problematic, and security researcher Chris Moore has repeatedly pointed out the manufacturer's Oxygen OS-based devices not only gather a ton of user data, but they also tie this into the individual devices and the user accounts in particular. Why is that a problem? Well, it opens up the door to malevolence. Now, it's one thing for marketing people to go on out and collect bulk data about, you know, what website is the most popular, what TV show is the most popular. It's not tied to individuals. But it's quite another to go on out there and have this data tied to individuals so you can go on in and say, what is this one person looking at? And that's got a lot of people very, very worried. And again, part of the problem is these executives at these companies that are siphoning out this data, nothing ever happens to them. So they're going to go on abusing the system, abusing you, abusing me, and it's going to lead to more disasters like Equifax. And Equifax is now admitting they lost 15.2 million, with an M, data on all of these breaches. Remember when they said it was 400,000? Nope. 15.2 million. And apparently Equifax didn't even admit it. This came out of Blighty's National Cybersecurity Center. So the worst data hack in history is getting worse because apparently, along with everything else, the Equifax breach exposed driver's license information onto the dark web, which I'm sure is going to be gratefully received by all those people trying to fake the next election or steal the next election. And another article saying the same thing I was over at QZ.com. The Equifax breach happened because today's executives know they have nothing to fear. And that's absolutely right. Let's grab a phone call. Sherry in Fredericksburg, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Thank you, Mike. I think some of these new fixes to help technology perform better are really just pushing us in the direction they want us to go. They're products to buy to fix this faulty stuff, and it just means more money that we have to pay out. And it all takes us in a direction they want us to go. It's just awful. Now, I have my reception, the sweet spots in my home where I can get the show. It used to be I could just stick it here on the counter and do my work, and it's all in one place, and I could hear everything, turn things on and off when I want to. Now I have to travel throughout the house to find where I can tape some, where I can hear some, and it's slowly disappearing. And the radio has become so hard to hear. The reception's is just disappearing every day. The last 4 shows, I'm lucky to get the end of the show. I just got an hour, I think.
Okay, well, let me ask you a couple of questions. Let me ask you a couple of questions. You use the word radio. Are you talking about an internet streaming radio?
No, I just have a plain CC radio, digital radio, because I'm not a tech person. So anyone who just wants to hear you on a radio, and Mike, Mr. Mike, the producer, he does a wonderful job. It's almost, I don't know how he manages to do what he's doing, but something was just knocked off. Something started interfering, and he got that knocked off, and you back on. I usually can't hear the show by about this time. So, this is South Central Texas. Okay.
Okay, let me ask you a question. So
okay.
You're listening to us on an over-the-air broadcaster, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay. What are the call letters?
What are the call? It's I just have 104.9.
Okay.
And you can hear how bad it is.
Okay, well, let me ask you a couple of
All right. Well, you can turn that down.
That's the
right.
reception.
Okay. Well, I mean, there's a couple of different things can happen depending upon how far you are from the transmitter site. If you're listening to Skip, I mean, right now we know solar activity can get in the way of that. It may just be that your radio is kind of wearing out and it's time to get a new one, or it may be that the radio station has changed its broadcast pattern, because the FCC every once in a while, if somebody complains of overlap and interference, they'll come on in and say you have to change your broadcast pattern, and they can shift it away from you. Station I used to do a lot of work with in terms of talk shows was KKCR out on the island of Kauai, and for a while they had a repeater right here on Oahu, but unfortunately that started interfering with a station that was down on Maui, and they had to take it down. Apparently, according to Michael, you're listening to us on a low-power micro broadcaster. We are the darling of the Part 15 transmitters, and it may just be that he's moved his antenna. If I were you, I'd think about maybe getting a new high-end radio, like a shortwave. And again, I recommend very highly. I absolutely love this thing. This Texan phase lock loop shortwave AM FM single sideband. It's a wonderful, wonderful radio. It's well worth the money.
Where'd you buy it?
I ordered it online. I had to order it online.
What's it? Tex? What is it?
It's TECSUN.
TECSUN.
And the specific model is the P as in Papa, L as in Lima, 880. And I absolutely love this thing. Yeah, I love this thing.
Okay,
it's a lot of fun.
October's my giving month, and I'm going to be sending you money, even if I can't get the show. And if things keep getting worse for everyone technically, and if they keep maneuvering us around and doing whatever they're supposed to do with all these tech problems that other people are having, I hope maybe you'll consider a newsletter, maybe something that could be mailed to us. I mean, I don't want to lose.
Oh, yes, and my copious amounts of free time. We'll definitely add that.
Well, I mean, if all else fails, I just don't want to lose your news.
Thank you. I appreciate it. But then, that's everything I do on the show is also on the website. So it's not like there's an additional newsletter needed or warranted. I mean, really, Claire and I work like 16 hours a day on all this stuff, and we just can't take on anymore. We can't take on it. We're old people. I'm building a new public image of curmudgeon. That's my new public image, curmudgeon.
Yes. Well, if we collapse, just don't rule it out. If everything collapses,
No, I don't rule anything out, but,
okay.
We'll see what happens in the future. Anyway, Sherry, I got to let you go. Oh, apparently the owner of your microstation just called, so I'm going to let you go back and talk to Michael and see about if they're going to be able to sort you out there. Okay, so thank you very much, and we're going to let you go talk to Mike and the owner of that transmitter. We're going to get back to the news here. And basically, James O'Keefe has done it once again, where he has come out with two videos. And in one video, he's got a technician from YouTube. Hang on a second. Let me just check something here. He's got a technician from YouTube openly admitting that above the level of the search algorithms, they're picking and choosing what stories get the most coverage, and it's automatic. The established corporate media gets the top of the search, and everybody else comes down below that. So they're basically trying to hide the independent media. And the guy on the video says, well, if they're searching for Alex Jones, they went there to find him anyway, and yes, they'll find him, and it's just going to be a few pages down. I assume that applies to me as well. Then he got another tape of a New York Times editor bragging about colluding with YouTube to push the political agenda, and basically got the New York Times audience strategy editor, Nick Dudich, basically saying he exploits his position at the Times to promote content that is intentionally sought to, among other things, damage President Trump's businesses as a means toward forcing his resignation. So, I mean, that's what's going on. The online social media corporations have become just as corrupt as the corporate media. They're trying to control what you're saying. They're trying to control what you see. They're shadow banning every dirty trick they can think of to try and keep the truth from coming on out. That this government lies to us. It has always lied to us. The corporate media are the handmaiden in all those lies. Whether it's Saddam's nuclear weapons, human-caused global warming, Assad's sarin gas, and whatever it is they're going to blame on North Korea to try and start that war. Like that ridiculous idea that the crashed helicopter in Okinawa was shot down by North Korea from 800 miles away. That is really, really ridiculous. Now then, over in Beijing, China, they just got their first snowfall, and it sort of underscores how notoriously short this autumn has been. Snow is reported in the Haituo Mountain area of Beijing's northern Yanging district, as well as on Mentogu Mountain, just 100 kilometers west of the city center. Okay. Getting messages back and forth from our people. All right. A little bit more news from the world of science. Apparently, 14 years ago, in fact, basically just before Christmas Day 2003, the European Space Agency tried to land a ship on Mars called the Beagle 2 lander, and it was going to look for signs of life. And those of us who are convinced that we found life with the Viking landers back in 1976 were looking forward to this. Unfortunately, it basically shut down just after it landed, and now they have spotted it with one of the orbiting ships around Mars, and they're saying that basically it got, as they describe it, excruciatingly close to succeeding. It did land and deployed at least 3 of its solar panels, but apparently one of them jammed and prevented the antenna from acquiring Earth, and that's why they were never able to hear from the Beagle again. So apparently NASA is expressing concern. Up until recently, all of the radioisotope thermoelectric generators used on, well, Viking and Curiosity use the isotope plutonium-238. Generates a lot of heat, can be converted to power, and it's used for probes, especially those going way out to the edges of the solar system where solar cells just aren't going to work. But unfortunately, apparently, they're starting to run out. Nobody's manufacturing this stuff anymore. And NASA is somewhat concerned. Now, they need this plutonium. They can't substitute the ruthenium because the plutonium isotope half-life is years and years and years. And obviously, for long-duration missions, the ruthenium would basically fade out before the mission was over. Going to take a break for commercials. Back with the last segment of our program after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Last segment of our program today here. Bunch of stuff is developing over in Japan. The Shinmodake volcano has started an eruption. Boy, the whole planet is shaking and rocking and rolling. We're getting a lot more quakes down here on the Big Island. Apparently, there is problems in the world of GMO. Apparently, the pests that are supposed to be destroyed by glyphosate and these other GMO pesticides they're evolving to tolerate it. And apparently, a major study into groups genetically modified to repel pests has found the insects are rapidly developing resistance. And they found the bugs that developed resistance that substantially reduced the efficacy of the GM crops in 16 cases of 2016 compared to just 3 cases in 2005. It took just 5 years for the bugs to be able to shrug off the poisons produced by the GM crops in the 16 areas where bugs developed resistance. And the thing is, Monsanto knew this. They knew that this technology was not going to be permanent, and they'd have to come up with something new, which is now they want a combination of glyphosate and dioxin. I mean, that's Agent Orange stuff out there. Now, according to a story over in 12160, apparently the FBI is opening an investigation to Harvey Weinstein on orders from the Justice Department, who fear that Weinstein will do a Roman Polanski. You're already too late. Yeah, he fled to Europe on a private plane. More people are coming on out saying that this guy attacked him. Cara Delevingne, I'm not even sure who that is. Basically tried to force her to have a threesome with another woman in a New York City hotel. Another victim has come on out about how Weinstein's assistant and a Miramax executive literally trapped the girl alone in Weinstein's room. So it's disgusting. It really is. And like I said, after the way I got treated by Hollywood, I'm having a certain visceral pleasure in this. Now, over at The Intercept, they have an article basically talking about a new study from Dartmouth, Yale, and Brown, in which they have discovered that members of Congress who don't have draft-age sons are much more likely to support hawkish wars, and they studied over the last 4 major wars. Congressmen who didn't have kids, they were all gung-ho. Let's draft them and send them on out there. Imagine my shock. Of course, congressmen who have kids are not going to want to place them at risk, or they're going to use their pull to get them sent someplace where they're not in harm's way. Like George W. Bush spent the Vietnam years flying jets over Texas, so forth and so on. Okay, let's see what else we have here, finishing up the news. Apparently, they've caught the governor of Michigan lying about the Flint water crisis. Imagine my shock about that one. And apparently, one of Christopher... Oh, there's the music. Time for me to get out of here. All right, I got things to do. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller. We'll be back tomorrow here on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Please take what you learn here, share it with everyone that you know. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.